Hi friends, my name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. So if you're an Australian, you'd be pretty appalled at what our government is doing these days. It's sort of, I think Whitlam would be appalled. Whitlam was a democratic socialist prime minister that was ousted with the help of the CIA. The CIA admitted this at a later stage, but he was ousted in about 1975. He was a really great prime minister, and then it was all downhill from there. Anyway, it's been a neoliberal mess since then, and it just gets worse and worse, and now we've joined the sale of arms that seems to be such a popular thing now. It's like it seems to start to become the only export that Western countries seem to want to engage in. So the Australian government, just read a little bit of this. It's a secret arm, the Australian government has this secret arms deal with nations that are engaging in this genocide in Yemen. And the Australian government has approved the export of dozens of shipments of military items to Middle Eastern countries embroiled in the bloody Yemen war. It's not really a war, it's more like it is a genocide, that's what it is. A conflict dogged by accusations of war crimes and indiscriminate civilian killings. Well, my idea of war is that it is a crime. Individual things, it's all part of the big criminal act of war. But anyway, so these internal Defense Department documents obtained by the Freedom of Information and from parliamentary hearings reveal since the beginning of 2016, Canberra has granted at least 37 export permits for military-related items to the United Arab Emirates and 20 to Saudi Arabia. So we're selling, the Australian government, which at this present time is quite a right-wing, xenophobic, racist government. Mind you, the other party, the Labor Party, is not much better when it comes to their position on these kinds of things. They don't really seem to have a position on, for example, the US empire and the wars that we're dragged into. But anyway, the current government, which is the Liberal, the LNP, the coalition, is engaged in, is helping with this genocide in Yemen. They obviously don't care that they're, this says, the 4-year war in Yemen has killed tens of thousands, and an air and sea embargo has led to more than 85,000 Yemeni children under 5 dying from hunger, according to one children's agency. And it's ongoing. There's children dying, 1 child every 10 minutes of famine and disease, and this is because of this, basically selling weapons, lots and lots of weapons, and to the very brutal Saudi Arabia. It's only just starting to come out about this in recent times due to that Khashoggi killing, the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, despite the fact that the Saudi Arabia is a brutal regime that beheads people in public and then hangs them up on cranes, with these beheaded people on cranes for everybody to see. I mean, it's a sort of it executed a woman who was a maid, an Indonesian maid, and she killed the person she was working for, this man who was in the process of raping her. She killed him while he was trying to rape her, and they beheaded her just in the last few weeks. So they beheaded this Indonesian maid who was basically defending herself, ended up killing the person who was trying to rape her, her employer, and they ended up beheading her. So that's the sort of country that Saudi Arabia is. And here we are selling arms to them, along with the UK and the US, billions and billions of dollars worth, so they can conduct a genocide in Yemen. So there's actually a defense contractor now in Australia called EOS. So the defense minister, Christopher Pyne, played an important role in securing the deal which while he was defense minister, according to a January statement released by EOS announcing the $410 million deal. So, you know, this is sort of what we're engaged in now, is we're becoming, I think we're 20th now on the list of, in the world of arms dealers. This is what Australia is now. This is just disgusting. It disgusts me. Like the Christopher Pyne, he's met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed and the Defence Minister Mohammed al-Bawadi. That was in October 2016. He's basically been going there and lining up deals with them. He's got twice in 2016, in February, April, October 2017. He's been traveling there. He's been a busy boy. In early 2018, basically, you know, sort of sorting out major arms deals with Saudi Arabia. You know, it's truly disgusting. It's truly disgusting, and this is like, there's no checks and balances here. There's no oversight. There's nobody saying to this government how disgraceful this is and trying to pull back on it. I haven't seen anybody saying that. Maybe I've missed it, but you know, it seems to be sort of like just a non-issue. A genocide now is a non-issue in Yemen, and it's been going on for 4 years. So I won't read out most of what this said. I'll leave a link for you to check out. But if you're an Australian and you if you're an Australian and you don't know what's going on as far as the wars that we're involved in, I really think you should check out some independent news, because we're not getting any truth in the mainstream media at this present time, or for decades really, because I mean, even Four Corners and Dateline in Australia just promote now the US empire narrative. You know, we're not getting any real information about what we're doing, what things we're participating in these 8+ wars now that are happening. I mean, nobody's attacked the United States. They're just going around now creating these wars of choice for resources and hegemony, and we're just going along with it. Anyway, I want to read you, just to wrap this up, I want to read you something, because it takes more than just politicians to keep a war going. And Phil Rockstro, I hope that's how you pronounce his name, he's somebody on Facebook that I just know online, basically on Facebook. We haven't really had any personal interactions, but he always has these very scathing sort of updates that he writes fairly regularly. And he said, a few moments ago, was on a thread rancid with war party liberals who were claiming that the Gilet Jaunes were, and he's paraphrasing here, quote, spoiled middle class, end quote, soreheads. And they did not represent the French working class, and that what came down in Ukraine, and he's paraphrasing again, was a secular and democratic uprising and not a US State Department funded and fomented, in brackets, the US ambassador and US Undersecretary of State were only caught plotting in a hacked phone call, for fuck's sake, he said, in brackets, a coup d'etat spearheaded by neo-Nazis, proving liberals are a crucial supporting pillar of capitalism and imperialism, and are, given capitalism's inexorable trajectory towards rightist, hyper-authoritarian rule and militarism, the handmaidens of fascism. Macron is the very quintessence of liberalism. The working class's uprising in France reveals liberals are not only useless in the struggle and eventual overthrow of capitalist despotism, but present one of the greatest barriers to liberation from wage and debt slavery and the curtailment of planet-decimating ecocide. the solution? Take heed of the Gilet Jaunes and start the revolution as if the bourgeois tools did not even exist. There's a lot of people who call themselves progressive who are quite fine with imperialism. And they're quite happy to argue for the continuation of neoliberalism, which is crushing and killing people, basically. That's quite frightening, but it's true. I mean, particularly the imperialism thing. I see that all the time. People who call themselves progressive are quite fine just ignoring the imperialism and the wars that are going on. And it's probably because they benefit in some way. And they're quite happy with it. In some ways, as Avi Martin has even said at one point, sort of the imperialist instinct is almost in the DNA of a lot of Americans. They're so used to their government just going in and meddling in other countries and overthrowing regimes, governments that have been democratically elected. There's been 81 between 1948 and 2000. Government was one of them in 1973 to 1975 with Gough Whitlam. He was, the CIA admitted they helped overthrow him. But there's a lot of people who call themselves progressive that are quite fine with all of that. And one thing Glenn Greenwald, the journalist, has pointed out, and this is something we really need to take heed of, because it's like algae growing over the pond. It starts off very slowly, and then suddenly you look at the pond and algae is sort of third of the way over the pond, and then suddenly it's half, and then before you know it, the whole pond is covered. And that's what's going to happen with fascism, basically, because in most countries now there is no alternative. There's usually two parties, and they're both almost as bad as one another. The one that's supposed to be for the people is usually very centrist and writing neoliberal policies. And the right, of course, is either completely nuts or just full-on fascist, sort of conservative, and just absolutely doesn't even pretend to care about the people. In some ways, I have more respect for people who don't even pretend than these, like, for example, the Democratic Party that's constantly trying to pretend like they care about people when they absolutely don't. They care about corporations and they care about the lobbyists giving them money. Most people in the Democratic Party in the US are like that. And I pointed out, like, for example, if you've checked out Hillary Clinton's Twitter page, she has a cover photo at the moment. I'm recording this December 26, 2018. She has a cover photo at the moment where there's a young black boy in front of her. He's probably about, I don't know, 8 or something. And she's standing behind him. It's in front of a mirror. I don't know where they are. And he's doing something, and she's got her arms around him, and she's got this, sort of, it's quite a loving kind of a thing. And she's smiling, and somebody's taking a photo of that. And I made a little meme because I just thought this is sort of so kind of awful, because, it was back, she was calling black people super predators many years ago. And, it's so cynical, that sort of thing, of her in the cover photo, doing that, pimping this little boy, basically. Look how I care. Isn't this cute? Look how I care for black people and stuff. When, she's quite happy. Her husband was the one that actually introduced bills that led to mass incarceration of black people. So, it's Ajama Baraka, who was the running vice presidential candidate for the Green Party. He said, I'd be quite happy if I could get all black people away from the Democratic Party, because of, they're no friends of, that's one reason, and they're just white supremacist imperialists. I'll show you that little meme I did of Hillary Clinton, because it's almost creepy actually, the cover photo she has on Twitter at the moment. But anyway, that encapsulates that party really, that photo, because they like to, the Democratic Party in the US like to present as a party of diversity, and you know, they think that if, say, they put in somebody like Kamala Harris as a presidential candidate, you know, she's I think part black, she's a woman, and you know, represents the this pretend you know, love of diversity and care for, I mean, you couldn't fault her on her Twitter feed. Her Twitter feed for the last year and a half has been, you'd swear she wanted Medicare for all and all these kind of things. And you know that if she gets in, she'll just be like a female Barack Obama, who Barack Obama had an opportunity to get Medicare for all for everybody in the beginning, and he didn't. And he did a whole lot of other awful things, including expanding 2 wars to 8. So 2 wars to 7, sorry. So, you know, this is what will happen. You know, if by any chance, and I don't even know if the Democratic Party wants to win really, because they still get lobbyist money whether they're in power or not. But the way they're going, I can see there'll be four more years of Trump. You know, he'll be here in 2024, and if he gets back in, because he's just the empire with the mask off, as people say. You know, they don't like him because he's not suave enough. He's not a Barack Obama. He's not a good salesperson for empire, and he's not controllable. Even though he's definitely been a warmonger, as good as any warmonger, as good as any of these U.S. presidents. But he's not from their club really. So they want somebody who's smooth, that people won't be paying attention to, like all the silly people that are paying attention to every single silly, awful thing that Trump does. I mean, there's no point in paying attention to him and what he says and does. It's just a sideshow. He's not an aberration. He's just he's what has been. They've been leading to this sort of president for a long time, and these other presidents have been awful too. It's just that Trump, as I said, he's not a very good salesperson. He's not smooth. He's not cool and groovy like Barack Obama. You know, and they don't like that. They want somebody who people won't pay attention to and that will think he's all wonderful. I mean, Trump makes George W. Bush look good. They've decided to rehabilitate George W. Bush at this time because Trump makes him actually look good. You know, and you know, it's ridiculous because George W. Bush, like Barack Obama, they're both war criminals, and so is Donald Trump. But what I was saying about, you know, when there's no alternative to, when both parties in whatever country are, you know, one is very centrist and is promoting neoliberal policies, and the other one is far right, which seems to be the case. It's like here in Australia, it's like that. You end up with somebody coming along who is like Donald Trump, or like Bolsonaro in Brazil. Bolsonaro is just a straight-out fascist because people get desperate and they reject this two-party sort of thing and the fact that nobody's doing anything for them. And they go with somebody who's just like Bolsonaro, who's just a fascist and hates the left, and is openly saying that he's going to like persecute the left and probably even execute people. It could go back to the sort of Pinochet death squads and stuff. He's fine with all of that. And you know, this is what's sweeping the world, more and more fascist governments. So unless we have, you know, some alternative to these two-party systems where they're both so much like one another, one's just a bit crazier, we're going to end up with people like Bolsonaro everywhere. That's what Glenn Greenwald was saying, and you can see it. It's literally happening before our eyes. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it doesn't come through voting. It doesn't come through voting. Change, if you know that old saying, if voting actually changed anything, it would be illegal. It comes through grassroots movements. So we're going to have to, we're going to have to get our act together and start developing some grassroots, movements. And that's why the Gilet Jaunes, the yellow vests, is so important, really. Because this is a push against neoliberalism. That's what this yellow vest thing is. It's a push against social inequality and everything that's come from neoliberalism and capitalism, because capitalism is inextricably linked to imperialism and war, and it morphs into fascism. Capitalism, it morphs into fascism. That's what happens, and it cannot be anything other than ecocidal, this whole system of capitalism. I don't know, but this is something that we're going to have to, we're really going to have to, join this yellow vest movement. I'm all for non-violence. It's something that if we don't actually start getting out in the streets, it's just going to be all taken away from us, and it's just going to be a total feudal system, which it almost is. It's almost like that now in some parts of the world, and it's coming to Australia. I feel less and less, there's not even any point even calling politicians in federal parliament or going to see them, because they're absolutely, they can't stand up to US empire. They are trying to please corporations, and that's how it is in Australia these days. But anyway, this yellow vest movement is something that we should keep an eye on and really consider it becoming a global movement. This is our opportunity. It's like catching a wave. If we miss this wave, goodness knows when another one will come along, and by that stage it'll be absolutely too late if it isn't already. Anyway, sorry I meandered around here, but that's what I do. So if that doesn't drive you crazy, great. I hope that your holiday season is going well, and may, as I said yesterday, may 2019 be everything that you hope it to be, and let's try and be anti-war and anti-imperialist, and also let's go vegan, because it's all linked. Our oppression and exploitation of others, of other vulnerable people, other sentient beings. That's what veganism is promoting, the end of that towards non-human animals. And anti-war and anti-imperialism is the end of exploiting and killing and sort of stealing and everything that goes with war. War is a racket, as Smedley Butler said, General Smedley Butler. War is a racket, and veganism is something that we need to do because it's the right thing to do for non-human animals. It's the right thing to do. It's the non-violent thing to do. It's the just thing to do, to stop exploiting the vulnerable, to stop exploiting sentient beings for completely trivial reasons, of palate pleasure mostly. Okay, so check out my site, howtogovegan.org, and I hope that you'll join me again. Please subscribe to my channel at Vegan Trove on YouTube, and click the notifications bell so you get updates. When I talk about Palestine, I notice that my channel gets suppressed, and it really is very sluggish. So it helps if you like various videos, if you like them. I don't expect anybody to like anything just because, but if you like a video, then please click the like button and leave comments, because that helps the channel get more exposure. You know, that's if you like it, of course. If you think I'm just flapping my mouth and I'm not really saying anything that's worthwhile, well then don't worry about it. But you know, I do this for myself mainly because I feel like, I mean, I do it for myself and I do it for other people. It all helps if everybody gets out there and puts out stuff, because the fourth estate is finished. I'm not a journalist by any stretch, but the fourth estate is all sewn up, and so if we don't talk about independent journalists and what they're up to, and the news that they put out. How is it ever going to get out there, because it's censored so heavily in these platforms like YouTube, etc. Like, look at my things on Palestine. If I put anything out on Palestine, it either gets an age restriction, or it's very low in viewership, and I don't think that's because there isn't anything in there of interest. It's because you know, there are things that YouTube suffocates, and they demonetize people like the Jimmy Dore show and other shows like that that are very, very important to disseminate independent news and to talk about it, and anything that is of any sort of challenge to the mainstream establishment narrative, which is basically pretty much everything that I would talk about, everything that Jimmy Dore talks about. And I'm not comparing myself to Jimmy Dore. I'm just a nobody who just occasionally talks about various issues, but I'm just talking about people like Jimmy Dore and Abby Martin and the Empire Files. They get suppressed in all sorts of ways. So it's very important, I say this often, that we just disseminate information wherever we can. So, you know, if you can start a vlog or whatever, or just, even if you just share or like things by people like Jimmy Dore and Abby Martin and the Empire Files and Mike Preisner and Eyes Left podcast and Moderate Rebels and all those kind of shows. And podcast and Media Roots with Abby Martin and Robbie Martin, those kind of things. Everything helps if you support them by liking things, commenting, sharing around. So that's what we need to do. And otherwise, we're just going to be creeping. We're not going to be creeping towards fascism anymore. We're going to be galloping. And at the moment, we're sort of trotting, if I can use a horse analogy. Not that I'm into, you know, as a vegan, I reject the use of horses, but I'll use that analogy. You know, we've been creeping along, now we're trotting, and if before we know it, we'll be galloping towards fascism. Okay, so anyway, my name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals for Vega. Have a lovely day tomorrow, and if I don't talk to you before New Year's Eve, have a wonderful New Year's Eve, and talk to you soon. Bye for now.